I don't know about you, but I think the last time that I read anything from my NetGalley shelf was the mid 1980s. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife and today I am announcing ARCtober. ARCtober is a readathon run by myself and some of my lovely co-hosts where all we want you to do is just go through all of your ARCs, go through your NetGalley shelf, go through all of the books that you've been sent from publishers and actually read them. If you're anything like me, you go into kind of a requesting spree on NetGalley, and then when you get approved for the books, you somehow forget that you actually have to read them as well. The co-hosts on this are Brianna from Four Paws in a Book, whose idea all of this excitement was, Margaret from The Word Nerd, Cal from Retrieving Books, Lily from Literary Lily, Michelle from Michelle's Library, and Paige from Pages with Paige. We have come together to put together some bingo boards for you that you can tick off the prompts. The readathon is a little bit of a choose your own adventure. You have got 3 bingo boards that you could choose from. You could go for the kind of an easy way into it with a smaller bingo board of 9 squares for you to check off. There's the more intermediate with 16 squares to tick off, and if you really want to go all out and clear out the cobwebs, you've got the massive bingo board of 25 squares for you to tick off. Don't worry though, you can double up, you can triple up, you can fit one book into as many prompts as it will fit. And if that helps you to clear a little bit of space on your NetGalley shelf, much the same like I need to do, then you're doing okay. This readathon runs from 12 midnight on the 1st of October to 12 midnight on the 31st of October in your time zone. So you have got the whole month of October to combine this with as many other books as you want to read. If you want to spend the whole month reading spooky books, but you've got loads of them on your TBR, if you want to read a couple of holiday books and you've got loads of those on the shelf, go for it. You can fit these in any way that you want. Of course, I'm not going to go through all of the prompts that are on all 3 boards. I'm just going to go through the ones that are on the big 25 blowout board so that you get an idea as to what books you can put into each prompt. But let's go through. The first prompt on the bingo board is first in a series, and this is pretty self-explanatory. If you've got the first book in a series either coming out, has already come out, but it's on your NetGalley or ARC shelf, go for it. Second up is fit the season, and this can be either of 2 books depending on where you are in the world. If you're like me and you're in the northern hemisphere, you're looking for a book that's got autumnal vibes, you're looking for something spooky, looking for something creepy or cozy autumn vibes. Or if you're in the southern hemisphere, like Paige, who's from Australia, you're looking for something that has a little bit more of a spring vibe, where the weather is starting to turn a little bit nicer and the temperatures are starting to heat up again. Prompt number 3 is a book that everyone is talking about. And this can of course be one that you have seen floating around on BookTube, one that you've seen on Bookstagram, one that you've seen on BookTok. If you are sick and tired of hearing about this book, if it is showing up everywhere that you go, you can't sneeze but this book says bless you, that's the one to fit in here. Next up is a prompt that's a little bit subjective, and it is a book that has an ugly cover. You can take this in any way you want. Maybe it's that the cover design isn't really floating your boat. Maybe there's too much on it, and maybe there's not enough on it. Maybe it's got color schemes or colors together that you don't love. Maybe it's just got blocks of text and that's not a design that you really vibe with when you're looking for books. Either way, if you're not gelling with the cover of this book, fit it in here. Next up is your oldest ARC, and if you're like me, your oldest ARC could be anything up to 3 years old. Don't tell the publishers that I've said that. But if you've got one that has been lounging around on your NetGalley shelf or on your ARC's TBR for ages, it is finally time to get it done. Next up is one with your favorite color on the cover, and this is anywhere on the cover. It could be a very small dot anywhere on the cover, it could be the full cover, it could be the author's name or the title. If your favorite color pops up on the cover, sorted. Next is an October release. Obviously, we're running this readathon throughout the month of October, so it felt like a good idea to actually acknowledge the month of October. So if you've got a book on your TBR that is due out in October, but you haven't read it yet, now is the time. Next is your shortest ARC, and this might be difficult for you to determine if it's a NetGalley book, but you can always go to Goodreads, you can go to Storygraph, and you can compare the length of the books. If you've got them on a specific NetGalley shelf, you can kind of order them in the length of pages, and whichever one is the shortest one, there you go. Next up, to go with the first in a series, we'd like you to read a sequel. You might even be able to read a sequel and the first in the series of the same series if you can manage to pair them up, but any other sequel will do here. Next up is one that I will definitely find several candidates for, and that is an arc you forgot that you had. There are so many of them that are lounging around on the later pages of my NetGalley shelf that I genuinely don't even remember having requested, not to mind having been approved for. So there is definitely going to be scope for everybody to fill this one in. Next up is an arc from your favorite publisher. We did want you to give a little bit of a shout out to some of your favorite publishers over the month. So whether your favorite publisher does a lot of romance, it does a lot of thrillers, it does a lot of non-fiction, whatever their vibe is, just read one book by your favorite publishing house and you're done. Next up is a graphic novel, and this one might be a little bit difficult for you to put in if you haven't requested a lot of graphic novels, but if you have got any of them floating around on your shelf, go for it. Next up is a free space, and we just want you to fit in any book that hasn't been able to fit into any of the other squares, or maybe it's not an arc but you'd like to read it in October anyway, because I know a lot of people like to go for kind of spooky vibes when they're reading in October. So if you don't have any spooky or thriller books that are on your shelves, you can still fit it into this challenge. Next up is a debut author. We love to champion people who have got their first book coming out any year. So if you have got a debut author on your shelves, fit them into this prompt. Next up is a highly anticipated arc. Have you got that feeling where when you saw it on NetGalley and when you pressed the request button, all that you wanted was to get that email to say congratulations, you have been approved? Whatever book fit into that criteria for you fits into this square. Next up is an arc that has already been released, and I am pretty sure you are going to find so many candidates for this square. Next up is either own voices representation or a book that features or is written by a marginalized community. So if you have got an LGBT book, if you have got a book by or written about a person of color, if you have got an Indigenous book, go for it. Next up is LGBTQ representation, and that kind of comes on from the previous square, where if you've got a book that is about an LGBT character, go ahead and read it. Next up is one that we are all definitely guilty of, because we're all guilty of it when we go book buying, so why wouldn't we be guilty of it when we go book requesting? We'd like you to read a book that you requested solely for the cover. It is kind of the antithesis square of the ugly cover, so if this is a cover that really struck you when you were scrolling through the lists, this is the one to take it off. Next up is a book by an author of color. We'd really love you to champion Black voices, Latinx voices, Indigenous voices. Any book that is by any author of color would fit. Next is a book that you heard about from another booktuber. It could be any of the hosts that are in this readathon. It could be any other booktuber under the sun. It does not matter who it is, as long as you have heard them speaking about it on their channel. Next up is your newest arc, and I know we all request the books, they all start filing in, and then we forget about them, or we go to something that's a little bit further down the line, or we go through one of our already published books. But this time, if you've requested it, if it's come through, you gotta read it. In the antithesis again of the overhyped and everybody is talking about a book, we would love you to read a book that is supremely underhyped, that you do not hear anybody talking about, but that you think people should be talking about, so why don't you start the conversation? Next up is an indie published book. If you have got a favorite publishing house, that's great, and fit them into here. But also, we would like to see you reading a couple of indie published books, or maybe even a self-published book, and give that a shout out to. And the final square on the bingo board is a non-fiction book. I don't know about you, but I have got a couple of non-fiction arcs or a couple of non-fiction NetGalley requests that are floating around that I definitely need to get to. So, time to finally tick those off. That is everything that you need to know about ARCtober, which is running from the 1st of October to the 31st of October from midnight to midnight in your time zone. We would love to see you getting involved with the bingo board, with filling out your TBR. Let us know whatever you are planning to read. All of my co-hosts will, of course, be mentioned in the description box below. Please go check them out, like their videos, subscribe to their channels. There will probably be reading sprints on everybody's channel over the course of October for you to pick up as many books as you can. If you can think of anything that you would like to say, please do leave me the pumpkin emoji for October. Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.